Good morning. Good morning, everyone, fellow commissioners. Welcome to the City Planning Public Meeting. Today, February 22nd, 2017. Mr. Secretary, please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chairman Knuckles, members of the City Planning Commission. Today is February 22nd, and this is the City Planning Commission public meeting being held in Spector Hall at 22 Reade Street. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones and beepers. All speakers should fill out a speaker's card at the desk outside of Spector Hall. In addition, we ask that those providing testimony please identify yourself, limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and speak clearly into the microphone. I will now call the roll. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Here.
Commissioner Besser.
Here.
Commissioner Cantor.
Here.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Here.
Commissioner De La Hoz. Commissioner Dweck.
Here.
Commissioner Eady.
Here.
Commissioner Efron.
Here.
Commissioner Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Marin.
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz. A quorum is present. The first item is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, February 1st, 2017.
On the minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved.
Scheduling on calendar numbers 1 to 9. We have resolutions for adoption scheduling Wednesday, March 8th, 2017 for a public hearing to be held in Spector Hall at 22 Reade Street.
On the resolutions, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The resolutions are adopted.
The next part of the calendar is the report section on page 18. Reports, Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 10, CD6, C170057ZSK, and the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning the Red Hook Initiative for a favorable report on calendar number 10. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Eady.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 10. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 11, 12, and 13. CD 14, calendar number 11, C170127 PPK, calendar number 12, C170128 ZMK, calendar number 13, N170129 ZRK, and the matter of application for the disposition of city-owned property and for the zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning the Caton Flats for favorable reports on calendar numbers 11, 12, and 13. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Eady.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
A favorable reports have been adopted on calendar numbers 11, 12, and 13. Borough of Brooklyn, calendar number 14, CD 13, M090170C, MMK, and the matter of a resolution to approve an amendment to the city map concerning the Coney East map split for a favorable report on calendar number 14. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Eady.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marine.
Yes.
Favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 14. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 15, CD4 N160396 ZRM, and the matter of an application for an amendment of the zoning resolution concerning the West 23rd Street text amendment for a favorable report on calendar number 15. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Eady.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marine.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 15. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 16, CD5, N170091 ZAM, in the matter of an application for the grant of an authorization concerning the St. Patrick's Cathedral parking for adoption on calendar number 16. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Amen.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron. Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 16. On Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 17, CD2, C170156, PPR, and the matter of an application for the disposition of one city-owned property concerning Teleport Site A. For a favorable report on calendar number 17, Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 17. Borough of Staten Island, calendar number 18, CD3, N170155, RCR, in the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning 115 and 119 Downs Avenue for adoption on calendar number 18. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 18. Calendar number 19, Borough of Staten Island, CD3, N170152, RCR, and the matter of an application for the grant of a certification concerning Iona and Edgegrove Avenues for adoption on calendar number 19. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor. Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
A favorable report has been adopted on calendar number 19. Borough of Staten Island, calendar numbers 20 and 21. CD2, calendar number 20, N160265 ZAR, calendar number 21, N160266 ZAR, in the matter of applications for the grant of authorizations concerning 246 Flag Place for adoption on calendar numbers 20 and 21. Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Yes.
Commissioner Besser.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantor.
Yes.
Commissioner Cerullo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dweck.
Yes.
Commissioner Edie.
Yes.
Commissioner Efron.
Yes.
Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Levin.
Yes.
Commissioner Marin.
Yes.
Calendar numbers 20 and 21 have been adopted. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 22, concerning Evergreen Avenue office space. This item has been withdrawn. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 23. Sorry. The next part of the calendar is the public hearing section on page 32. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 23, CD2, N160244 ZRM, for public hearing in the matter of an application for an amendment of the zoning resolution concerning 5557 Spring Street text amendment.
Jay Siegel.
Good morning, Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners. My name is Jay Siegel. I'm the land use attorney with Greenberg Traurig, and we represent the applicant here. The application is for a text amendment to move area A1, which is shown over here, 50 feet to the west to encompass two buildings, known as 55 and 57 Spring Street, which are owned by our client. Okay, so these are the two buildings at issue, 55 and 57 Spring. They collectively occupy a little more than 5,500 square feet. Right now, they extend this far into the zoning lot, and we want to be able to move them into A prime because, as the commission understands, the lot coverage regulations for A prime allow 100% lot coverage, while for A, it's 60% lot coverage. So the sole purpose of the application is to be able to move the commercial uses that are in front of the building to extend them all the way to the rear. You want to show the floor plan? So this is about extending the rear a total of 1,747 feet to the rear lot line. as is allowed in A prime. The land use rationale for this is that these buildings have always been more of an A prime building than an A building. A prime requires commercial uses of a certain type. And this building has always had those commercial uses facing the front of the building, while Area A doesn't require any commercial use at all. In addition, all of the other buildings on this street frontage extend to their rear lot line except ours. So we think the building has been more of an A prime building than an A, and we're seeking to move the building into A prime. Now, our client bought this building, these two buildings, about 1 3/4 years ago, and we tried to obtain support for the application from a local community group called Bowery Alliance for Neighbors and from the community board. This hearing has been put off 3 times because we met with the community board's land use committee 3 times and a subcommittee twice to try to get support. We've agreed not to combine all of the uses in the buildings into a single use. We agreed not to seek a hard liquor license. We agreed to move mechanical equipment currently in the rear yard to the roof of the entire building to keep make it quieter. We provided a building management plan, but we've been unsuccessful in getting support. You'll hear directly, and you've read the community board resolution, you'll hear from them today, but we think the primary reason they've been negative is because they're worried about precedent. There are a couple of quotes in the community board resolution that worries about the next application. Toby Bergman, who is here today to speak in opposition, asked us at community board meetings to provide an analysis of every lot in Area A1 that might be able to make the same arguments as we make, that if we were successful, whether any other lots would be able to make similar arguments.
You want to conclude, Jay?
I would like to be able to respond to several things in the community board's resolution. I leave it to the commissioners as to whether any of them would ask me a question that would allow me to do so.
You've been here before, yeah, right. Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, questions for Mr. Siegel? Commissioner Levin?
Okay, I'd be happy to hear a continuation of the discussion of precedent and your analysis about whether this kind of a change, if we do it here, would invite future applications like this.
Right, we actually did eventually provide our analysis, which said otherwise, that we looked at every lot in the, you want to hold it, Dan? I know you can't see it from there, and of course we'll make a submission. I can't see it from here, but we'll make a submission afterwards and show you the details. We concluded there are no other lots, and the reason it's not so surprising, because most of the buildings in Area A have residential on the ground floor, and they couldn't extend to the rear lot line because they would be, these people require light and air. And there are other buildings that are on blocks that don't go to the rear lot line. We identified 2 criteria, that the block have buildings that go to the rear lot line except for the subject building, and that you have a commercial ground floor. And we found there were no other lots similarly situated.
Other questions for Mr. Siegel?
Jay, just a general question, really. I mean, it's in some way sort of theoretical, but just really food for thought. You know, we just received a copy of the borough president's recommendation, which was favorable. And while she, rightfully so, identifies those areas where the applicant has agreed, as you just mentioned in your statement, to do certain things to, I guess, address some of the concerns the community board has raised, both they, because obviously these things have been committed to, and I'm assuming, you know, will be memorialized in some way if they aren't already, but they also, and the borough president references this in her recommendation, state that this application really provides no benefit to the community. And And that's really the point the community board makes. The borough president references it, but yet still provides a favorable, based on all of the other issues here, provides a favorable recommendation. So can you just talk a little bit about that and how, obviously whether there's truth to that, which I don't think would be your position, but also at the same time, what benefit the community can expect to derive from the approval of this application?
Yes, Commissioner Rillo. Commissioner Rillo, we haven't seen the borough president's recommendation.
Okay.
But I'm sure that was a good summary of the relevant points. Yeah, I mean, the application, as many developers propose an application, is to benefit the developer. We've never said otherwise, that by extending the ground floor commercial, developer would make more money, which is why it's being proposed. What we pointed out is, well, this developer has no intention of combining all of the uses into a single use, such as an eating and drinking establishment. It's possible that a future developer would make the entire ground floor, if you want to put it out there, make this whole ground floor
One, yeah.
into a single eating and drinking establishment and use the outside for an outdoor cafe. And that would be, I guess, more disruptive to people in the neighboring buildings who have residential above the ground floor. That this wasn't a threat, because this is not what this developer is doing. But someday, 5 years, 10 years downstream, somebody else could have a single eating and drinking establishment, have outdoor cafes that necessarily are more disruptive to surrounding tenants. So we pointed out that by agreeing not to combine units, by extending the use to the rear lot line, that possibility would be foreclosed. Even the combination, is we also made other things we do. There was concern, as you probably hear, about traffic along the street. We agreed not to have a storm vestibule that some uses have in the winter months that do block traffic. By not combining everything into a single unit, we'd probably stop a lot more traffic than would occur by having smaller retail stores extend to the rear lot line. Those were the benefits that we thought would be afforded to the surrounding community. And the people in the building, of course, would directly benefit from not having potentially disruptive uses in the backyard or outdoor cafe. We agreed to landscape the roof of the one-story extension and leave it open or not open to the people in the building, depending upon what they wanted to do, what the tenants who were subject to rent guidelines wanted the building. There are 7 tenants who are subject to rent guidelines. Whether they wanted to have access to the roof or not, it would be up to them. We agreed to move the mechanical equipment on top of the roof, which would be much more quiet for people on the second floor. We thought that would benefit the building. So those are the things that we thought would be the concessions we were making that we thought would be beneficial to the community at large and to the people in the building. We also came up with a building management plan to talk about what we would do during remaining construction, both of units in the building and of the rear extension. The community board resolution says that it wasn't sufficient, but when we presented it to them, we said any suggestions we'd be happy to talk about. We didn't get any suggestions. We have a resolution that said what we gave them wasn't good enough. But we certainly didn't say that was the final word, and we offered to speak with them about any additions they thought would be appropriate.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Efron and Commissioner Levin.
Thanks. Thanks for elaborating. Does your client have a particular tenant or type of tenant in mind right now?
No, not yet. No, because the plan was to have similar tenants. Since they're relatively small extensions, they have not, we have not offered space for marketing yet. Certainly, with all the negativity we had from the community board, we've spent our energy to seeing if we can get the application approved and not marketing.
Thanks.
Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. The various protections you described as your client being willing to offer at the community board level all sound very appealing to me and things that I would think would be important if we were to act favorably on this application. But the community board didn't take up your offer. So can you confirm to us that those commitments and the promise of a restrictive declaration is still available for us if we choose to act favorably on this?
Yes, it's still available.
Okay, thank you. And one other question is about the status of the tenants in the building. The briefing materials we received said that there were 8 rent protected units, and you just referred to 7, so I wonder if you could straighten that out.
There are
And then I'd
7.
like to ask about the dwelling unit that is proposed to be, would be removed with these extensions. Under the materials indicate that it's vacant, but can you confirm that that one is not a rent-protected unit?
Yes, right now, there are 28 occupied units in the building. 27 have expressed an opinion about the application. And of the 28 in the building, there are 7, not 8, subject to rent guidelines. There are 3 that are rent control, and all of them are in favor of the application. There are 4 rent stabilized, and they're opposed to the application. And the remaining 20 market rate units are in favor. I misspoke slightly. There are 23 in support, and the 23 in support consist of market rate units and the 3 stabilized units, 3 rent control units, one tenant is here today. The one unit, to just explain when these buildings were built, they had retail in the front and they had a residential unit in the rear. That in 1985, one of the residential units was replaced with retail, and in 1996, a second one was replaced with retail. That is what the community board resolution refers to as illegal. While both uses are allowed, the owners from 30 and 20 years ago should have caused the first C of O for the building to have been issued to reflect the change. As the commission knows, that usually does not happen when there's a small change in the building. When our client bought the building in June of 15, there was the 3rd unit that had been in the rear on the first floor was unoccupied. It was not subject to rent control. And it has not been occupied yet. It still remains unoccupied. It's not being used commercially.
Okay, so not rent control and not any other rent restriction?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Siegel?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Okay, our next 2 speakers will be in opposition. Penny Jones. Penny Jones?
Good morning, my name is Penny Jones. I'm a rent-stabilized resident at 55 Spring. I oppose the construction that's being requested because I think it will seriously damage the building, and I don't want to be rendered homeless. I'm one of the endangered species of arts professionals who are being gentrified out of the city. I'm a technical editor for the Metropolitan Museum, and in addition to that, I'm head of the Liz Christie Community Garden. With that, it's very important that I'm able to stay both in the city and in the neighborhood. I've been in the building since 1980, 36 years, and what I've seen is whenever there are interior gut rehabs, interior cracks open up in the hallways, around my ceiling, when there was pounding.
Jackhammering?
No, for a basement. Pile driving. On Mott Street, Mulberry, in the middle of the block, which is catty-corner to our back, large cracks opened up all over the building. I think the building will stand on its own, but if this amount of work is done, I think it could cause a catastrophic gas line situation or worse damage to the building. Whenever we are 57 is right next to the subway tunnel. We're one building away. Whenever the ground is frozen, my pots and pans clank. I just don't think the building is up to this amount of work. And they are also, I don't know if it's part of this proposal or if it's just part of working in the building. They're also talking about moving our first floor stairway, which again, I cannot imagine how the building will support that. It's pretty much like a lot of the old tenement buildings that's held together with bubble gum. And it will stay together, but not with this amount of vibration. And that's why I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. What floor are you on in the building?
The 3rd floor.
Okay.
3rd floor back.
Other questions for Ms. Jones? Commissioner Cantor?
Ma'am, have you had any professionals to look at the building and
No,
make a determination, or is it strictly your gut?
my observation over 35 years, I'm a freelance editor. I don't hire professionals.
I'm talking about with respect to an analysis of the building.
No.
So it's strictly your own opinion.
Yes, but I've seen this over and over and over again.
And in the past, when you've seen it, I suspect that the building regulations have been tightened over the years. That would reflect some degree of safety improvement with regard to stability of the building, et cetera.
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Jones? Thank you.
Thank you.
Toby Bergman.
Morning, Vice Chair Knuckles, Commissioners. I'm Toby Bergman. I'm a member of Community Board 2. I serve on the Land Use Committee. I also serve on the Executive Committee as the former chair of the board. The first thing I'd like to say is that I hope you'll ask me questions about what the Community Board's take on this was, and not go with the characterizations, many of which were not correct, about how we handled this application. Our opposition to this application is primarily based on it being a private application that serves no public benefit, and in fact goes in the wrong direction. This is a neighborhood that has experienced a great intensity of retail over the years. When the SLID was originally established 40 years ago, and it's been changed very few times, it spoke about the small neighborhood stores. Small neighborhood stores is not really what's happening on Spring Street, and not the problem on Spring Street. Neighbors have experienced and have complained to the community board really now over a period of 10 years. It's one of our highest sources of complaints about the level of commercial activity, and particularly eating and drinking establishments on Spring Street. Spring Street also has a significant problem of traffic because it leads directly to the Bowery, which takes people to two bridge crossings. So you have intense pedestrian traffic, intense vehicular traffic, and pedestrian safety with regard to traffic is something that's spoken to directly in the SLID. We see that as getting worse and worse anyway, but this takes it in the wrong direction because it increases the size of the stores. And it's not true that, in our experience, and we have a lot of it, that larger stores produce less activity. They produce more. The kind of restaurant that might occupy this very small stores, and do occupy the very small stores on some of the side streets in the SLID, are not really our problem. The problem is when those restaurants get bigger. And the promise of not allowing liquor really does us no good. The reason it does us no good is we have much experience about the problems in eating and drinking establishments, and the worst ones are the ones that serve only beer and wine. They cater to a younger audience. They have lower price points on the menus. They tend to pack in more people. So making this into a larger space, including the very large double backyard, potentially creates a large beer and wine establishment, which would be the worst thing in this location. I'd like to point out that this is not only narrow sidewalks on Spring Street with lots of traffic. One of these buildings is directly opposite a very, very busy subway entrance, which narrows that sidewalk to 5.5 feet. So I really appreciate some questions that enable me to get into what our process was, because we tried to work very, very hard to work with this applicant, and we think that they failed to work with us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bergman. Questions? Commissioner Eady.
Well, I'd like to hear more about the process at the community board, if you
Well,
could go into that.
I, in fact, was alone on the first round of this presentation, which was back in November, when the whole committee really wanted to vote against the application right away. I urged very strongly that because the applicant was offering to make improvements for the people in that building in specific and for the neighborhood as a whole, we should at least take them up on that. We did meet with we did decide to put it off. We had that time. City Planning also confirmed they gave us that extra time. We met with the applicant as a small group, and we asked them to bring certain things to us. They didn't respond the first month. They responded the second month, 4 days before our committee meeting, and that doesn't work for a community board process. The things that they came back to us with were we considered very insignificant. We felt that they had actually, maybe we misunderstood originally, but we thought they had agreed to no eating and drinking, and they went to beer and wine, that they insisted on having beer and wine only, which just did not help us. We were very concerned about situations that have happened in the building. There's a history of very bad ownership of this building. In fact, the prior landlord, the one who sold it to this applicant, there are potential indictments, investigations ongoing now with respect to this applicant here and in other places. We don't feel that the current applicant has done anything to show an improvement. They have continued to move fairly aggressively to try to bring apartments up to market rate. They have not, for example, gone back and applied for a C of O for our resolution does not say illegal use of the ground floor, but it points out that those changes to the ground floor should have triggered a C of O, creation of a C of O, which never happened, and we think that prior to coming to city planning and asking for a permit such as this one, they should have first cleaned up their situation in the building and gotten a C of O. Just one more thing. Okay. There are several applicants in the building, and one family in particular that was very concerning to us. It's a family, their children go to public school. There is an action by this applicant against that family to claim that they do not live in the city. Their kids go to public school. They came to our hearings. When we brought this up, the applicant said, if we get this, we will drop that lawsuit. Well, to us, that's kind of almost offensive. They should not take a bogus action against a family with 2 children and then promise, based on the outcome of a special permit process, to end that bogus process.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Bergman? Any other questions? Thank you, sir. All right, we'll switch back to those in favor. Gina, is it Sasala? Sakala, okay.
My name is Gina Sakala. I'm 85 years old, and I was born and raised in 55 Spring Street. And so far, everything has been done well in my building and the other building, 57. So I have no problem with these men. They're very good, these landlords, very good people. They improved the building. They've done all the work good and work in the apartments. So very good. My grandparents came from Italy in 1905. And then I was born, after that, my mother was pregnant, and I was born 85 years ago. So far, everything is good in the building. I have no problems with them.
You've lived your entire life at 57
Yes.
Spring Street?
55, yes.
55. Questions for Ms. Sakala?
Thank you.
Commissioner Levin?
I have a question about the neighborhood, and you're probably uniquely suited to answer it.
Well, the
You know-
neighborhood was all Italians.
Right,
But now it's all,
but tell me about the shops. So the whole idea when these particular rules were created, the idea was Mulberry Street was the place for the kinds of shops that would attract people from outside the neighborhood. And Spring Street was going to have the kinds of shops, right? It got this restriction because the idea was that it wasn't going to be the same kind of shops as on
No,
Mulberry.
it was all different,
Spring Street was different then?
all different then, yeah, all different stores,
Mm-hmm.
different buildings, all new buildings are there.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful neighborhood
Right.
now.
So do you think, is there a big difference between the kinds of shops on Spring Street now and the kinds of shops on Mulberry, or are they all kind of the same?
No, they're almost all different, you know. Mostly new, all new stores,
On everywhere?
yeah,
Okay. Good, well, thank you. Thanks for coming.
that's it. Thank you.
Well, any other questions for Mr. Kala? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Steve Matry?
Hi, I'm Steve Matry, one of the owners of the building. It's my first time, so, plus I'm an awful public speaker.
So
I guess-
far, so good. Go ahead.
So I wanted to just mention a couple things. I'm not the construction expert of my group, my partner Kevin is, but I know in response to Penny, we're not doing a basement, so I know we're not gonna be doing any piles as it relates to that. We're doing some footings, but nothing extensive. As it relates to Toby's comments about one of the rent-stabilized tenants who was living in the building with a family, you know, I don't want people to perceive us to be bad landlords. If you ever look this up, there's not one complaint about us. In addition, we haven't received one stop work order from DOB regarding any of the renovations that we've been doing in the building for both the lobby, the hallways, and the apartments. But as far as when we bought the building in 2015, and we typically look into tenants to see if anybody's doing any illegal subletting, we noticed when we knocked on the door that he hadn't lived there. Some guy answered the door, said it was his dad, which is, you know, fairly common in the landlord's business to say to somebody when you're illegally selling an apartment. So we looked into it. We found out that he had 2 properties in upstate New York, spent a lot of time up there. So, you know, after talking to our attorneys, we decided, you know, we should at least look into the fact of whether this gentleman actually lives in this apartment. I don't know him. I don't know that he has 2 daughters or a family of 6. So we looked into it, and we had a high degree of likelihood that he didn't live in that unit. One of the committee members had mentioned to us, if we were to approve your application, would you consider dropping this? So we didn't bring it up to them. That's actually how that went down with, was it Sandy, maybe? She was a litigation L&T attorney. That's how that all came up. So I just wanted to speak to that because I don't want people to think that we're aggressive landlords. And the landlords previous to us, Meralda Properties, who Toby mentioned, are being indicted on other properties. This was not a property that was mentioned by the Attorney General's office in their investigation, so, which also has nothing to do with us. So,
Okay, questions? Commissioner Efron.
Thank you for coming. It's always nice to
sure.
see the actual property owners at here, and we really do appreciate that you're here. I had a question about the community board's representation, or perhaps misunderstanding about the liquor license versus the restrictive declaration against eating and drinking establishment. Since this does seem to be a concern within the neighborhood, is this something that's contemplated that perhaps there would be a restriction against eating and drinking establishments?
we had always discussed a hard liquor license, a hard liquor application not being sought. It happens to be, look, in a perfect world, we'd love to have an apparel tenant, a fashion tenant, a cosmetics tenant, something like that. I just don't know if the block is there yet. Right now, it's more of a eating and drinking block. Once you start going east of Lafayette Street, kind of west of Broadway, it's all apparel, all your high-end fashion companies. We're not there yet. We'd like to be there because it's a better credit tenant and it's better for us. So to eliminate food and drinking establishment altogether would seriously hinder our ability to market the space for rent, because I just don't know if we're at a point where we can get interest from an apparel company. Fresh, who is one of our tenants, which is a cosmetics company owned by Louis Vuitton, is a great tenant. They've been there since 1999. We'd love to get a matching tenant like that, but I don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're not receiving any interest because they're just not ready to go east of Lafayette Street then. But we'd love to have that type of tenant over food and use if it was up to me, food and beverage.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Mr. Matthew, again, I repeat Commissioner Efferns, thanks for your coming. It makes a much better impression when we're able to speak directly to the owner and not through their advisors. Something that occurred to me while Jay Siegel was speaking, but I didn't get a chance to follow up. There's been an agreement not to combine the commercial spaces. But would that apply also to the new extension out back?
I think the way that we were doing the extension out back, in a perfect world, the way that I saw doing it was like kind of 2 stores, kind of with a similar frontage of Fresh, where it was like kind of, if you had 3 stores, Fresh could go straight back, right? In 57 Spring Street, which is a 25 by 105 foot lot, built 80 feet deep. So we could extend it back another 25 feet, which would give it another 1,000 square feet of square footage in the rear. In the perfect world, we'd have, to go, we could do it, it's difficult to have, this is only like 10 feet of frontage, so to go all the way back 110 feet is not conducive for most retail tenants. It's kind of like a real tiny bowling alley space. So we'd want to be able to somehow combine it, or as Penny mentioned, we had thought about moving the staircase, and as long as we could do it, which we took an engineer through, we could. We would reconfigure that, which wouldn't, but affect, this would be the best, moving the lobby would be the best way to do it. If we didn't move the lobby, then we would just keep it like that. But I don't think we have any intentions of just going straight back and making like a giant L. That's an awkward space for a tenant. So I think we would do something along these lines, or potentially move the staircase if we did it that way. Also, I thought that, in regards to foot traffic, combining all these spaces into one store and only having one set of doors would probably, in my opinion, create a lot more foot traffic, because everybody's got to enter and exit through one door, than if I had agreed not to, which we did, not to combine all the stores and have 2/3 sets of doors. Would give more stores and more people to walk into different stores instead of having everybody trying to get into one store. So I thought from a foot traffic perspective, having more entrances and exits would be more beneficial than having less, but I guess that's, open to other people's opinions.
But wait, I guess I'm not totally clear. Are you, in the thoughts about, in the commitment that you made to the community board that was reflected in the Greenberg-Traurig letter?
We weren't
You
going to
said
combine
you-
all 3, correct?
You were not going to combine all 3,
But we had the ability to combine
those 2?
these 2.
Correct, okay, that part I get.
Or these 2.
All right, but how about the new extended spaces? Did your agreement not to combine them apply to the,
Dan, did it, or
It did.
It agreed not to combine in the rear?
so they'd be
Okay.
forever treated as separate buildings, separate commercial spaces?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I couldn't actually remember what happened in the rear, but if you're saying that we agreed not to combine it in the rear, that's fine.
Okay.
The idea was that they would just extend the extensions
Okay.
of what's there.
Okay.
Okay. I got to say, it seems like you're going to a tremendous amount of effort for some pretty small properties. But you obviously think that makes commercial sense.
Tough
That
to
how you
me.
see
It's difficult to, right now, it's a very difficult environment to generate revenue. I mean, this is what I do for a living, so if I can increase my revenue by a little bit, it helps us out. So sometimes we have to do a lot of effort to make a small amount of money. So this is why we're doing this. I also, wanted to say, according to Jay's point, is that I did think, not being biased as a landlord, that by enclosing this and soundproofing this area for the tenants that lived in the rear of the building, right, because we're not altering the character of the building. We're not doing anything in the front. It just happened to be rear expansion. So for the people that lived in the condominium building behind it and the tenants that live in the residential building in our buildings in the rear, that by enclosing this and soundproofing it, it would be better than having an outdoor cafe where people can stay up till 4 in the morning. That's just what I thought as a better quality of life. That was one of the benefits that I thought that the community, not the community, the tenants in the building and the people in the rear could benefit from. So that didn't seem to be overly important to them, but it was something that we pointed out that would be beneficial. And I think once we built it, nobody's ever really going to go through the effort to knock it down and then unopen it. But just thoughts that I had as an owner and a person.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Cantor.
Thank you. Good morning. A prior speaker referenced investigations and potential indictments, and if I understood you correctly, you said that you're not in that chain. Could you amplify that a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure. So the previous owner of the building was a owner called the Meraldas, who had some aggressive tenant buyout techniques, so to speak, I guess. So they were investigated by the Attorney General here in New York. This was not one of the buildings that was named. It was a bunch of other buildings. So we happened to buy the building from them before the AG's office and the investigation was going on. So this just happens to be a former property was owned by them. Nothing to do with
But
us.
you are in no way being investigated, et cetera,
No.
et cetera.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Marin?
Hey, good morning.
So, we had Ms. Jones testify that some work in the building, some upgrade work in the building, and some, of course, other work in the neighborhood has caused some structural damage to the building. In your work to prepare these drawings and studies, have you had anybody professionally take a look at the building to see of its structural integrity?
My partner Kevin, who is a construction expert, would be better suited to handle that. According to him, is that there's not going to be any significant construction going on since we're not going to be doing any piles, and we're not doing a basement extension. So we talked to our architect and our engineer, Kevin did, and don't see any reason at all why this can't be done. If it couldn't be done, it wouldn't be done, since we would need permits from everybody and sign-offs, but that's not my area of expertise, I'm not gonna lie to you.
So has Ms. Jones brought it to your attention, or you or your partner, in reference to the cracks she's experiencing in the building?
Mentioned it, but it's not something that, I can't even address it. I just, that, I don't know what to say. I just can't address it. We haven't been told directly by her offline that there are structural issues with the building, so I don't think that there's anything that's added normality with this building than any other building in the city. She has her opinion on what she thinks, but.
Right, but that's exactly my point. Opinions are not going to help you or the clients understand what's going on. So, I mean, in essence, if you're doing work in a building and cracks start to appear, that's a signal. Something's wrong somewhere. And I guess the question is, have you, and if you have not, are you prepared to engage an engineer to take a look at the structural
We
integrity?
haven't. We've taken, my partner Kevin has been handling that aspect of it, but when it comes time for us to engage an engineer for this project, it's all going to be done. So, and if they determine that we can't do anything, then we're obviously not going to do anything. Jay said we'll give you a writing after.
That's fine, thank you.
But yeah, absolutely, 100%. We do things by law, by code. If for some reason somebody said these buildings can't support an extension, then we wouldn't do it.
Well, it's not the extension that I'm concerned about. I mean, I'm sure it's the process of getting to the extension. I'm sure the write-up will reflect what's going on in the building. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, please again.
Commissioner Cantor?
Is your partner going to testify this morning?
No, he's not here.
He's not here. Is he, you say he's an engineer?
No, but he's been doing construction in the city for 13 years. He doesn't believe that there's any issues with building, but
I'm not clear on one other thing. Did you say you did or did not yet retain an engineer? a
Not yet.
Design engineer?
we have
You
not.
have not yet done
No.
that?
Talked to architects, but not an engineer yet.
Okay. So you're presuming that at the end of the day, the job will be fine, while the lady is presuming that based upon past history elsewhere in the neighborhood, it won't be.
That is correct.
Do you not have the ability to retain a structural engineer to review the situation right now?
We could. We just haven't, because we weren't sure whether this was gonna happen or not.
But it's not yet too late.
It's not, no, we could do it.
Could we ask that you consider bringing in a structural engineer or a geotech to take a look at the building and offer a report? Jay?
No, you can't answer, just nod or whatever. Yeah, respond in writing.
And you would remember, you would memorialize that? There's another speaker. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Matry? Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Dan Eggers?
Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Eggers from Greenberg Trog, representing the applicant.
Okay.
All I have to say is that, yes, in response to the questions asked, we will provide a report regarding the structural integrity of the building. We'll provide that in writing.
And that will be signed by a PE.
We could do that. We'll have to see whether we'd be able to, but I believe that we could.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your response.
It's a one-story addition. We believe there would not be any structural issues, but if the commission requires it to be signed by a PE, I believe we could probably do that.
Seems it would be helpful to resolve these questions that are being raised.
Well, I'm told it's, this is not called into question. The application before us does not call into question the structure of the building. So doesn't go directly to the issues before us. If the applicant, of course, can submit whatever they wish within reason in support of their application.
Okay, so the PE is not a necessity in your judgment.
Well, it's not, it's not, it doesn't go to the issue before us.
Okay.
Commissioner Besser.
Thank you. Before the applicant purchased the building, did he happen to have any inspections done by maybe a, property inspector or a home inspector?
Yes.
Were there any indications in that report that there could potentially be any structural issues? Because that would be the first place.
I believe no, but we will respond in writing.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions for Mr. Eggers? Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
All righty, we'll now go back to those in favor. No, this is also in opposition. You were in favor. Michelle Campo?
Good morning, Commissioners. I want to say, first off, I am not a public speaker, nor do I like
You
to
are
be.
now.
I am now, but it's unfortunate, I'm not a morning person. Please excuse the hat. I have a bad hair day. I'm a resident of the neighborhood for most of my life, and I'm not a spring chicken, unfortunately. And I am also with the Bowery Alliance of Neighbors. Now, one of our missions is to watch out for the structure of the neighborhood, the consideration of the residents of the neighborhood, and the scale of the neighborhood. Over the past few years, this neighborhood has gotten extremely congested. A point was brought up about Spring Street being mainly eating and drinking. This is not the case, not the case whatsoever. There are a few establishments, but not the majority of them are that way. And this would be, I've heard sort of promises about the two spaces not being combined, and there being sort of a text amendment, and I'm sure we all know about text amendments, kind of like Rivington House. So we don't really put a lot of weight in that. As far as the slid, it was made to the point of whatever the structures were there at the time, leaving them that way. In other words, not building out that back because of the light and air that is necessary for this area. And this is very short notice for the neighborhood, and we just got word yesterday, most of the people who are in opposition, who've been at all the meetings, are not here because they didn't know about it, or they're at work, or they couldn't be for some reason. And that includes residents of Lafayette Street, as well as of Spring Street. And there's a lot of traffic in the area, foot traffic. It's very difficult to walk down a sidewalk, especially between that subway entrance and that building. Very, very narrow. So any more traffic there would be just unbearable. People can't get into their building without asking somebody to move at this point. So the scale of everything in our minds, is already oversaturated and should remain the way it is now and not being combined with anything, and less light and air for the area. And one of the neighbors who lives on the second floor, right above where this structure would be, it would be right to his window. I mean, that's where the fire escapes are in the back. So I don't know where they would be.
Thank you, Ms. Campo. Questions? Commissioner Efron.
Not a question, but a comment. I believe the record will be kept open for a number of days after this hearing if you were able to believe that they didn't have the time to prepare whatever.
Yeah, a day is.
Other questions, Ms. Campo? Thank you. Basha Gerhards.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Basha Gerhardt here on behalf of Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. I understand our letter was received this morning and a portion of it was already read into the record, so I wanted to spend a little bit more time with my remarks this morning talking about the research that went into why we ended up approving the text amendment and why we recommended approval. We're very sympathetic to the quality of life concerns raised at the community board hearings. There were 3 separate hearings at their land use committee from the residents we've heard from before and since as this has moved through the process. But that was under the previous owner, whereas the bulk of where those concerns were generated. We found through the Department of Buildings Building Information System a series of work permits that had been filed over the previous owner's tenure that failed to indicate or mention that there were existing rent stabilized or rent controlled tenants, which would certainly indicate why there had been a number of problems during the years while construction had occurred for renovation of the other units. We also want to note for the record that while the retail character has significantly changed on these streets and the adjacent streets, there are other blocks of similar size, scale, and building size that also have 100% or relatively 100% lot coverage for retail use. So again, on the narrower lens of the land use and looking at the text amendment itself and the scope, we felt it was appropriate. We're certainly supportive of any other measures that could be put in place to address these quality of life concerns moving forward, and would encourage the community board to continue to work with the applicant on the construction tenant plan that they did submit to the board at the last committee meeting. So, happy to take any questions and talk to any of those points more.
Questions from Ms. Gerhardt? Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other speakers on this matter? If not, the hearing is closed. Mr. Secretary, might there be any other business before the commission today?
There is not, Mr. Vice Chairman.
You're certain of that, sir?
I am, sir.
All right. In that case, the meeting is adjourned.